We have, where's Anne Marie?
Anne Marie, you want to bring her down here? Or do you want to stay up
Yeah,
there?
she has that all.
Okay.
Anne Marie, you have that all set up if we need to go with that.
You want to start? Or?
No. No,
Well, we appreciate everybody coming today. We were getting a lot of calls, and quite naturally, you're interested in the commissioner's letter. I did not have an opportunity to listen to her presser or her conversation about the report. I actually was in Canandaigua County Court doing my other job. But the nuts and bolts of her letter makes it pretty clear what she wants this district to do. And we, of course, have not had the time or the opportunity to digest it all. But again, I think it's one reading will make it pretty clear what she wants. I think, though, it's fair to say she wants additional explanations, additional detail. I didn't read, and again, don't hold me to this, but I didn't read a lot that said you ought to be revamping it. I think she wants a little more meat, perhaps, on the bones, and we can do that. I didn't read her saying something is in there that should not be in there. And the most important thing that I personally want you all to get out of this, what I want the community to know, is that we have been committed to making sure we take the appropriate action steps under that report. And the reason why I asked Dan and Linda to bring our technical or our data chief here today is so that you guys could see that our actions, our words, go beyond the paper. We have begun implementing the specific steps that we articulated many, many months ago. And I think the best response to this report, the best follow-up to this report, is what you're about to see in what I call, or what they call, the JIRI, is that right? JIRA system. What's it an acronym for? Anne-Marie, do we know?
Actually, I don't know.
So let me just say to you what it is, and this should be the news. It is a project management software piece. We realized that the task, Dan and Linda realized that the task was so enormous that you really needed someone and somebody or some system to coordinate and make sure that we were staying on top of the duties charged. This letter doesn't change that. This letter we can easily feed into the JIRA system. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, Dan?
Yeah. As I looked at what the commissioner said, it really just asked us to enhance what we had already said, except for sort of a coherent overview that she wants. And basically, as you know, it's every child by face and name, and we can expand on that. But our goal is to have every child by face and name graduate, and graduate in the 4 or 5 years. Some of the, and I went through it quickly, but just one of them was change the word seminars to professional learning opportunities. Again, so there weren't really these huge things that are going to be difficult. In some cases, we were probably a little bit more aggressive than we needed to be on deadlines, and in other cases, we probably didn't go far enough. So we planned half a year of professional development instead of a full year, or even 2 or 3 years. In one case, under finance, we were going to the Finance Association instead of maybe the School Boards Association. So again, I didn't, as I went through it, see any major kind of changes, except really her saying, how are we going to hold your feet to the fire? And we have, since we've seen this in February, been moving right along. And that's our intent, that we have work to do. But we're not disputing any of the 84 recommendations, and we're working on all 84 of them as we speak.
And again, if Anne-Marie will demonstrate JIRA, I think that is the news. And I'll take Dan's phrase, putting our feet to the fire. When you look at JIRA, you will see that's how we She didn't tell us to do a project management software piece. We made that decision, and you will see visually how we intend on tracking our progress in these various areas.
Did that guide what you presented a few months ago?
No, actually, what in terms of how we responded to the DE's report, we developed those action steps first, and then we said to Anne Marie, how can we integrate this into a system so that we can monitor and manage what we are doing? Because one of my recommendations was, why don't we hire a project manager? Well, we got enough people around here anyways, but the brilliance of this software is it takes the work of lots of different people, because every day, for example, last night I was here until 10 o'clock, because the board obviously has action steps it has to take. But all that becomes integrated, so I can be at my laptop, and Dan can be at his laptop, and the deputy superintendent can be at her laptop, and we can all be, those of us who have authority to get into the system, see where the rest of us are at. It's a brilliant system. It transcends what she's saying, because it's a system that I believe we could use on any number of tasks. This is the most critical task before us now. But this application could be used in any number of functions where you have cross departments working on different things.
Can I go back to the overall art care? Basically, I mean, I guess I read her letter maybe a little different. She started with what she thinks is good, but she was very firm that she still doesn't think it's up to par, or what you have promised in the report you are not capable of executing. What do you think, how do you interpret that?
Well, you know, time will tell. I also think time tells us, people forget this, they forget this narrative, but again, I can only use as my point of reference. When I started, many of you were here when I started, and it's verifiable, the 4-year graduation rate was 39%. I can ask any one of you now, what is it now? And you'll tell me, 59%. When East was the commissioner, who was king at that time, sent East High School, which was our largest high school, a letter saying, hey, listen, you got 5 options, you got to decide within 6 weeks. You know what their 4-year graduation rate was? 31%. You know what it is now? 61%, because we engaged the service of the University of Rochester. Out of school suspensions, out of control. Now they're in control on a steady decline. So I disagree with anybody. This is just my opinion. I disagree with anybody that things are the same. They're not better. Nobody's celebrating. Nobody's saying mission accomplished. But we're clearly on a trajectory that I think, eventually will build the kind of confidence in the commissioner and in the community, which is most important to the Board of Education, that we can indeed move this district in the right direction. And I think JIRA will build that confidence.
And I think another piece, as he said, 59% is our graduation rate. Nobody's celebrating, but at least people ought to be accurate. And the mayor recently said, oh, even half the kids aren't making it. Well, that's not so. And I think we need partners rather than really more people criticizing and having no solution. So I think that the commissioner's comments are helpful to us more than to really you about give us details. But it's about getting partners and moving in the right direction.
Dan, as someone who read what arrived from Albany, do you believe that this is more about style and perhaps pulling back from aggressive goals, or is this something that seems like a moving target that may not have even been well defined in the Education Department's presentation today?
Well, maybe in the education, but clearly the DE's report was very specific. Had 84 recommendations. Now, some may argue, how are you going to do 84 things at once? And that is our challenge, and it's partly how this software will help us. But we're a big organization, and I do think we can do them all and can do them well, and we'll fine-tune it. But I think anytime you try to manage a system from several hours away, it's hard to do. The people that live here are the people that have to not only live with the results, but improve them. And I think that's what the board's trying to do, and the staff, and we just have to bring the whole community working on different pieces of it.
So part of her letter says that the plan lacks cohesiveness, and maybe some outsiders might think that was also a theme when you guys were trying to put this plan together. I know that there was at least one other board member that was concerned with some of the wording, concerned with some of the plans that you guys were moving forward. and I'm sure you guys listen to each other and that's a whole process, but how does that come into play now? You know, the concerns that those board members had about what you guys were presenting to the state when you guys submitted it, and now we're here submitting a revised plan to an extent.
And again, the board has differences, that there's no question about it. But as far as cohesive, there was nothing about an 84-point changes that have to be made to 11 different areas makes that cohesive. The point is, that's really my job, to make sure it all gets done. And, you know, we didn't have an overall cohesive statement, but we're never really asked for one either. We were given 84 things that had to be corrected. So
and let me just piggyback on that, because I think that's an excellent point, and it's often missed in this back and forth. It was very clear what we were to do. He had 84 recommendations, and we were to respond to each and every one of them. No one said anything about a grandiose mission statement, that these are the things you have to do. And by the way, let's be clear about this. The distinguished educator participated in every phase of the development of that action plan. And in terms of my conversations with him, I have no reason to believe then or now that he was not satisfied with our approach. We did exactly, again, read the original statement. We were to respond to each and every one. We have strategic plans. Anybody can put together strategic plans pretty quickly. We understand the importance of being comprehensive. But again, the request, the demand rather, was very clear. These are the 84 things that you must do. Tell me how you're going to do them. And we described that. Now, you want to talk about cohesiveness. We understand that, Dan understands, these things have to be brought together. Again, I had asked that you consider, as part of your story, how JIRA brings these things together. It brings together people. It ensures that there's accountability. It ensures that the system is moving together collectively. Because again, let me remind you, as I'm working on my computer, somebody else is working on their computer and entering their data. And I'm seeing what they're doing and why they're doing it.
So this system helps you rewrite, essentially deliver a rewrite of what you initially submitted, because it can find the holes that the commissioner has pointed out?
See, the commissioner didn't find holes because we addressed everything. What she found was that either some things weren't specific enough, or some things were done too quickly and needed to be longer. The software just tracks all of it, because the truth is, in 84 different things, 11 different areas, what does the finance person care what special ed is doing? So it's our way of pulling it all together. But to the parent, they don't care except about their kid, and that we deliver the goods for their kid. And that's what we have to do. So neither of us are saying this thing is done. It's just a way to organize and make sure there are no holes with kids that get left behind.
So Jim, let me just respond to Jim's questions. How this works is she will say, oh, well, you were too aggressive, or you were too aggressive on your timeline to get this particular task done. What we would do, what the department would do, is readjust that time frame. JIRA allows people to reset the deadline.
So it can assist, essentially, in reshaping the plan that you eventually deliver.
Well, it allows us, JIRA will allow us to alter consistent with her letter. Again, as Dan says, she doesn't say there are holes in the plan. What she says, and on some occasions, you're too aggressive. There's no way you can complete this within the time frame. So, following our commissioner, what we will do is we'll go into that system and we'll adjust that time frame, and JIRA will adjust that time frame. And everybody who's connected will know simultaneously that that time frame has been adjusted. Now, she also asked for some more specificity. The department heads will look at that under Dan and Linda's guidance, and will adjust and require, maybe offer up some additional specificity. Here's the other thing about JIRA, that it's not just, okay, here's your timeline, but you can input, it's pretty remarkable, you guys know what software does, you can input things that you have done. So for example, the Board of Education, had a restorative justice circle because she was talking about retreats with the board. That was one of the action steps. Again, I don't want anybody to think we haven't been working on this. We weren't waiting for this letter to come. We understood we had work to do. So one of the things we did is we had a restorative circle with an organization called PERI. You've probably heard of them, Partners in Restorative Justice. We had restorative circle. The other day, as thanks to Anne Marie and her staff, I'm able to enter that we've made progress in that area, and I downloaded the agreements that we made consistent with that restorative circle. You know, just so that you don't miss the story here, in this case, we were practicing what we were preaching. We tell children in our schools, and we fund many schools to do restorative practices. So that's the wonder of JIRA. So if you wanted to get into it and see what we've done, you could not only see the dates that we met, but you could also see the agreements that we made. It's an amazing system.
So, from someone looking from the outside, she sends a note to you, or a letter to you guys last month, saying
Right.
we've got these problems. You're sitting here today saying we're doing all these great things, but she sends you another letter outlining what communication is going on. Why doesn't she? I mean, do they know what you're doing? Are you guys talking back and forth? Because from the outside, it looks like people are firing notes back.
Well, there's a little bit of that certainly going on, but the fact of the matter is, read the DE's quarterly report that's coming out in a week, and I hope that there's an improvement over this quarterly report from the last one. Again, none of this dismisses that there's work to be done, and it has to be done, but it's going to take a while to do it. And quite frankly, what you care about and what parents care about in the 84 things, they want to see what the graduation rate is doing, what their child in special ed is doing, what's happening in 8th grade. So there are some bellwether points that we have to improve on. And those are those 84 things. We're not searching for something brand new. He outlined in that the steps that we have to take.
Bless you. Bless you.
And, you know, the communication, I think there's been a problem even with the, you know, the mayor, the commissioner and all that. Again, what the district needs are partners. We get what our scores are. We're not making a value judgment about it. It is what it is, and it has to go up. I believe we'll be above 60% this June or August, and above that then 70% and so forth.
Dan, much of the discussion on the conference call today was about yesterday's news of superintendent finalists and whether the commissioner trusts, no offense, you and the board to choose the next superintendent. People who've been here more than a decade know that we've seen a lot of people come in and out in that role. And it's always comes with them this optimism that things are going to get better. She stopped short of saying she didn't trust you, but she said she wants to be involved in, she's paying close attention. How do you respond to that? And for people who say, listen, you've had a couple chances here to find a superintendent and they keep leaving on us, so what's going on?
Let me do two things. I'll get to your question, but I want to respond to you, Brian. I don't, you know, I understand why you look at it that way, but I don't look at it the way you do. You know, it's the process of continuous improvement. You say there's letters back and forth. These aren't missives. These are substantive documents that are being exchanged. So Dr. Kino issues his extensive, lengthy report, 84 recommendations. I think ours was 111, 110. How many do we have, specific recommendations? 110. Our response, we had 110 responses, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we respond to him, and then she says, I'm going to give you something a little more detailed, but I don't have it right now. And then she provides it. And she says, this is what I want to see you all do. So I don't think it would be fair to characterize it as, you know, people exchanging missives. She wants and we want to continue and improve. That notion of this doctrine of continuous improvement is well established. That's how I look at it, Brian. If I thought it was hostile or belligerent or an attack, no, I see it as a way in which we can improve, and she can improve the way in which she manages the districts. If she were to do otherwise, I would wonder what her commitment is to the schools. She sees a problem with our response, not even saying that there are holes. She says, this is what I think you need to do. And we will respond. I think that's good government. I do. I don't take any offense to her saying, because she's doing her job. But your question was, superintendent. You know, this process has been a little bit different. So it's like apples and oranges. I was telling somebody the other day, this particular superintendent search, we happen to have, and because we invited them, nobody said we had to. We very much trust Dan. He's a good guy, as you can see. He's approachable. He's got a great sense of humor. He's knowledgeable. So he sat in on our superintendent searches. So has Dr. Keno, not because the commissioner said, oh, let him be in there. We decided, because we've developed a relationship with Dr. Keno, and he sat in on the interviews. And both of them, while neither of them have a vote, they've both offered insightful commentary on the candidates. In terms of whether she is involved or not, legally she doesn't have a role. But listen, I would be a hypocrite. My colleagues would be hypocrites if we didn't invite the commentary of everybody, not only Dan and Dr. Keno, but Commissioner Elia. And so I have talked to her. This is the first time. And by the way, let me be clear about this. The last superintendent search, I talked to Commissioner Elia. So, I don't know. That I wouldn't say that she's responsible for our last choice, but she was involved in it, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's a member of the community. She has stake in the game. It is appropriate to talk to her. In terms of whether we pick good superintendents or bad superintendents, here's the reality. In urban districts across this country, the average tenure of an urban superintendent is about 3 years. Rochester is no different, and in fact, if you calculate it out, we're probably a little bit above average. Here's the other reality. People don't talk about this. But national organizations who've done research into this, specifically the Brookings Institute, has stated unequivocally that, no disrespect to my colleague here, that the length of a superintendent's tenure has no effect in urban or suburban districts on outcomes. You may not want to believe that, but that is the nature of the research. Notwithstanding all that, I think the most important voice that we have tried to solicit in the past, and what we're trying to solicit now on May the 4th and the 5th, is to get students and families and parents and staff members to come to those forums. I think that's where we can build up confidence. The superintendent that the four that are finalists, those names come about because they fit the profile that was developed from surveys, town hall meetings. So I'm not trying to shift blame, but my hope and prayer is that this person that we pick would be a person that was picked by the community because they defined what they wanted. Those four gentlemen that you see best fit the profile that was defined by the community.
Did they come to you, or did you search them
Oh,
out?
no. Well, we, like many districts throughout this country, we hired a search firm. And, I can't tell you the mechanics of, some people are on the job market. You guys maybe have been there yourself, so sometimes you put your name out there. And I do know this search firm, like many search firms, will on occasion look for talent. And so I can't tell you where any of these four fell, but they were in the pool of about 31 people. Pretty impressive pool. They whittled it down to about 7 or 8. The board interviewed those 7 or 8 and came down to these 4.
But from my point of view, Rochester has to stop looking for somebody to save the
Amen.
system. It doesn't work like that. I didn't know there was a study that showed we didn't have a lot of effect on. But the truth is that this has got to be a partnership
Yep.
with the community about how all our kids can succeed. And that has to go beyond a person coming in and sitting here for 2 years or such. So the reason suburbs hold on to superintendents for a long time is because their problems aren't the same as ours. And we keep thinking a person can fix that. That's not true.
Can we step back?
Yep.
Can we step back for a moment? If you guys are on track with your responses and everybody's happy and you're communicating with Aquino and everything, why is the commissioner still considering legislative action?
Because the things that are said in the DE's report are not done. We're agreeing that they need to be done, but the fact of the matter is they have to be done. And I believe that's what the commissioner's saying, despite anything anybody writes, either the DE's report or our responses, you got to have the stuff done. If it says a curriculum, you got to have the curriculum. If it says professional development, you have to have it, not in dribs and drabs the whole way. So if you read that, there are some things that are major that have to be done.
But you've had the DE here, and sitting in all your meetings, I don't understand how, if he's here, he's all the time, you have complete and total access to him, I don't see why you don't just turn him over a draft of your report and say what's missing, especially with the state education commissioner reporting to him with all the...
Well, and James, good investigative reporting, because as I told you 20 minutes ago, he was at all the meetings. And so you shouldn't assume, and you'd have to ask him, you shouldn't assume that this commissioner and him are in alignment, because you're right. But I don't have ESP, and in my business, we don't comment on other people's comments. It's called hearsay.
Okay.
You would have to ask the distinguished educator, did he communicate his viewpoint of the our original proposal that was sent in, and ask him that question. We can't answer that, but I can tell you this to answer your question. He was at these meetings. He did participate. He did comment, and I found it very instructive and helpful. Why you seem to think there's this disconnect between the commissioner and the DE. You have to ask them, because I can tell you this. Dr. Keno and the board were sitting in the same room, and we all, and various staff members, we all talked about the report. I can tell you, James, we sat in this room with Dr. Keno multiple times, him providing very informative, instructive, helpful information to produce the report that was eventually sent to the commissioner. Now let me just say, though, as I said to Brian, this whole process has to be credible, to be believable, has to be about continuous improvement. So maybe there is no disconnect. Maybe the thought is she has a point of view about what we submitted that he didn't have, and she's the commissioner. She has the right to say, this is the improvement that I think needs to be about. It doesn't have to be any grand conspiracy. It can be, as I said to Brian, about continuous improvement.
The superintendent said communication, though, has been an issue. What is there any structure, like every week we send an update to the commissioner or DE send? Is there any formalized way that you're communicating with the state, DE is communicating with whoever, that everybody is on the same page, this is what we're doing? Or how is all sides keeping up to date?
Well, I think actually how it works is pretty simple. Again, the distinguished educator is here at least 4 or 5 days a week, depending on his availability. He is intimately involved with different conversations with people on a pretty regular basis, talks to members of the board. I've seen him schedule appointments with staff members at all levels. There's no restriction by the superintendent. There's regular communication. As you all see, he participates in meetings. He's at board meetings. He speaks, if you've watched any of those meetings, you see he speaks pretty openly in a very transparent way. So I'm not sure I would agree with anybody who would observe that we don't communicate. And again, you can look at this any way you want, but think about this. Would you want your government to operate any other way? Major plans containing 84 recommendations are developed by the distinguished educator, whose office, by the way, is right behind you. He literally has an office here. His door is always open. We always talk, right? If I'm around, I can be in the bathroom and I can talk to him. I can be anywhere and he's talking to people. It's a pretty open system, but think about this. Don't you think this is the right way for government to operate? A major report is issued, offering up 84 recommendations within a pretty timely way, certainly within, actually, we did it in advance of when it was due. The district team puts together a series of action plans, 114 specific recommendations, right? They go to the commissioner. The commissioner, within relatively short period of time, because ours was a pretty extensive document, she provides a response, a more detailed response later on, and says these are concerns. All this happens, by the way, you guys calendar out, what, 3 months, 4 months, from the original point where he sends his 84 to the point we're at now, maybe 6 months, give or take. That is government communicating, and they're communicating in a very substantive way. I really, and I've worked at different levels of government, I think that's actually pretty efficient. Now, are we getting the results? I say, look at the graduation rate, look at the out-of-school suspensions, look at East High School, look at number 17. But that's short term. The question is, will we see the kinds of results, the return on investment, immediately? From these reports, probably not. If you're expecting that this exchange is going to see immediate results, absolutely not. And as Dan said, let me repeat, I have a little model of Superman. He's about that high, and I have a little sticky on his chest. And I said, no one's waiting for Superman. There's no one person, no matter who we select, that's going to turn this around. Only a community can do it.
Yeah, but the report is very clear that it is not one department in the district. It is not one. So there does need to be someone to bring that all together because it's not like there's just certain areas.
No, I wouldn't argue with that.
Report, identifies.
But the bottom line is getting them done, not responding, not writing a report, but if it says get professional development for all 3,500 teachers, then you have to figure out to get it done. And then you got to turn around and measure, has it had any effect?
Are the methods that you have offered in this report equal to what is creating the turnaround that you are staking here, the 60%? And is that, do you believe that that's being challenged by Albany in a way, at a time where, frankly, all that is successful or not successful is being challenged by leadership in the city at this moment?
Well, there again, it depends where you're coming from. We have a 59% graduation rate.
Does she not care about that in her response today?
I don't know whether she cares about it or not. The mayor says it's 50% or uses that as a general term, and all I'm saying is say it like it is, and then where do we go from there? 59% is not our ending point. Nobody in this organization is satisfied with that. So, you know, how the commissioner sees it or the mayor sees it, again, is we need partners, and most importantly, we need to get done what was in the 84 things, not just responding back and forth. We can keep doing that forever. We got to get them done, and you have to get them done over 52 schools, 10 programs, and all that. So leaving one out isn't good enough.
So let me just respond to Jim's question. You know, the frustration that you may hear, James, I don't know that she said. You said something. You said she wants legislative change. I didn't listen to the press conference, so I don't know if she said that.
She's not opposed to it, but.
Okay,
It's
so
on the table.
Everything's
on the table. And when I look at her, listen to her, or the mayor, believe it or not, I see myself. I see thousands of employees in this district, in this room and across this city, who you all should realize, you should realize this. The frustration that she has, the frustration the mayor has, that's why many people join the system in the first place. Again, at the risk of sounding redundant, and I can only speak from my personal experience, but I know there are thousands of employees who can tell the same story. When I got here, it was the same jacked up, troubled system that they're complaining about now. That's why me and thousands of other employees, some of them sitting in this room with me today, have joined the system. So we're not altogether different from them, right? We saw the same challenges. And ironically, here's the truth. Ironically, the system that they're concerned about by performance indicators is, believe this or not, and no one's taking any joy, no one's self, is better off than when many of us started. So I'm not throwing any shade on any leader, whether they're in Albany or 30 Church Street, who expresses concerns about our district. They should be. And you know what? Many people that work for this district, thousands of them, began working for a district when the performance indicators were even worse. That's why we did it. So not only should we not be waiting for Superman, but we should not be villainizing people who did not stand on the sidelines and say, I'm just going to let it happen. You got thousands of people who spend their time, their energy, and their commitment because, like the mayor, like the commissioner, they say it's not good enough.
So the superintendent that you guys ultimately will pick is obviously not a part of this whole process.
Right.
Are you guys confident that once that person comes in, they will fit in with this new plan, and how will that work under someone new who hasn't been part of making the district better or what these recommendations?
Well, again, my feeling is the 84 recommendations are not going away. And if somebody comes in and says, oh, I've got a great plan and there are 5, and that's what I'm talking about, sort of superintendent-proof a system, that we have to be committed to all 84 things, getting them done, and getting them done with quality. And a new superintendent will help bring that together, as you said. but you can't go in another direction. I think that's been the fault, really, of Rochester, that every new leader has a new way of doing it. I had the luxury, I walked in and the 84 things were here, and so now we've got to get them done. And there's lots and lots of work to do, but it shouldn't be somebody that comes and said, oh, I've got a new 84 things to do.
So in terms of our process, Amanda, every candidate that was interviewed was conscious enough to look at the Rochester history. I mean, the internet is a powerful thing,
Right.
social media. So they all knew about it, and many of them, without disclosing the details of the interview, came prepared to talk about how they were going to deal with the DE's report. So I think you're going to find that we are going to be, whoever the candidate is, that we are going to be synchronized. Dan's been working on it. This new candidate who we may select, all of them are very familiar with that process. So I anticipate that it will be a smooth transition because they all understand that it's a priority of this community and this Board of Education. Plus, let me add, to throw it back to JIRA, there is a system that we've created. And again, it's not just one person. It's a multitude of people. Again, people who came into the system wanting to improve it when they knew it was not performing up to par. Again, I want to remind you all, most people in this building, and certainly in this room, came into the system when the indicators were even worse, right? And through the process of continuous improvement, with a lot of different partners, from Albany to Rochester, we are constantly trying to figure out, as people are committed to changing things, how we can do that, how we can improve. I would really ask that, and if you still have questions, that's fine, but I want you to see what the new superintendent will see. I want you to see what the commissioner will see. I want you to see what parents and students can see, which is JIRA, which is a very simple, straightforward assessment of how we plan on, and you could just look at, visualize it, how we plan on making sure that everybody, our superintendent, parents, can understand how we're implementing the DE's recommendations. You want to light it up for us?
Is this part of the work that you guys have been doing the last month too, since you got the initial?
Absolutely.
Like, hey,
Yeah,
okay.
we did our response. We didn't wait for her response, and there was, the consensus was we had to have something to manage the disparate, the different things that were happening in the DE's report and how to coordinate.
We're coming up against 5 o'clock live shot, so if
Okay.
we want to do it, we got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a second, Reed, orient.
So I'm assuming you got this last month, correct? Or was it before?
When did we inaugurate this? It's pretty new.
The product, actually, we had purchased the product not for the DE report, but it is a project management tool. It's a tracking system, and so we actually are implementing under the help desk ticketing system. So when we have issues in school, technology issues, this is how we actually manage work. So, but it's Jira is the name of the product, but it can be used for many different applications. Actually, I'm going to go in. So you can see here that we've established a DE response monitoring project, essentially. And so all of these different categories were in the DE report. And what we did was we took each category, had actions that were identified in our response that we were going to follow up on. And so each action is under each different category. And then there are also sub-actions under that. So in teaching and learning, you can see that there are 11 different actions, but within those 11 actions, there are sub-actions. And so each one is then assigned to an individual. And then there is a structure in place, a security system in place, that only people that are supposed to be, or have been assigned an action, actually have access to the system to that particular action. So I'll just kind of show you, under the organizational structure section, there were 4 different actions, and then underneath those there were sub-actions. So just to give you an example of one, so under evaluate the effectiveness of, it was the evaluate the effectiveness of each area. Under the sub-action, when you click on the sub-action, it actually opens up another window where you can actually get into the level of detail. You can see who it's been assigned to, and it's been assigned to Deputy Superintendent Dr. Seti Miller. And so what she has actually completed this action already, and she has the ability to upload documents that are pertinent to her response. So she has uploaded documents, and all of the activity that she has done, it's actually tracked here. So some of her staff have added some items in response to this action, as she has, and everything is tracked and monitored. So you don't lose any history of anything. And then there's actually a workflow built in. So this kind of shows you the workflow of that particular action. And so once, maybe she finishes an action, she would then place it under review and it would go to the next level. And our chief of staff is actually then responsible for reviewing all of the actions before they actually are set to the status. So it's really a tool that allows us to monitor, but we also have some built-in reports as well. So there are a couple of different reports. This one is, I think, one that we will eventually be making available on our website so that the public can monitor our progress. And so for each different category, it shows us all the different recommendations. It shows us the percentage completed and our progress. And this just allows us to monitor, how we are doing. We also have workflow triggers built in. So if we're running late or we're going to be running late on any particular action, then the person that's responsible assigned to that action is actually going to get an email. And it's going to say, hey, it's due, you should follow up on this. So there are reminders that are sent out weekly for all of the different actions. So, and then there's also other reports that are built right into the system itself. And just kind of show you an example. So this is at the highest level, the DE monitoring structure level. And then we can run reports and apply charts, and we can say who's assigned to all of the high-level actions. And it shows you all of the people that are assigned and how many different actions are assigned to each one. And these are all staff members. We can go a little bit further than that, and we can go down to the next level. So say we go into that one category of organizational structure, run another report, and we can say, I want to see how the status is of all of the different actions under organizational structure. And it will show you how many are completed, how many are in progress, under review, and not started. So it's a project management tool. We're using it for the DE responses. We're also going to be using it for our help desk ticketing system and probably other projects as well.
Does Elia have access to this?
No, she wouldn't. I don't. No, probably not. She might. Yeah, she will be. Yeah. Yep.
Do you know from this, and I apologize if I'm asking questions, but what your timetable is and what your percent completion is, if you're running ahead or behind? I know that's like you just explained.
Yeah.
Multitudes of that answer, but is there a cohesive overview?
I think it's first of all.
6 weeks.
No, you're talking.
June 6th,
Her
the response.
Oh,
said 6 weeks.
but Brian, you were talking about something different though, or no?
No, I was meaning, I guess.
To her?
80, well, maybe
Of
this is
these,
what you're saying.
you're talking about the
84
ongoing update, right?
Points or the 100 responses, whatever. With this,
With that, yeah.
you are aiming to be complete at this point, and you're X percent done,
So
and that's ahead or behind.
if I could clarify, so we have to report back to the DE for his next report where we are for all the ones that March, April, May, June. We're trying to be ahead a little bit. But the whole platform goes out through 2020. So you're going by each action item by the date it's due. So some action items are due in August, some are due in September. So it goes by the item and then the month in which we projected that we would finish it. And so then the DE report really reflects the ones due during that quarter to make sure we're, on time, but also the quality and the effectiveness of the action we may have taken. So that monitors each action item, each recommendation, then each action item out through 2020. So if you see 10% might be right, because only 10% were due by April.
Is there like one specific thing that you guys, it stands out in your mind of this was the recommendation, this is what we did to make it better, and we've already implemented that, and it's because you had said that there's some things that are already, the wheels are already turning. So what's one thing that the wheels are already turning on?
Can I respond to that? Because I really do think that this one was very helpful. Is the principal selection process. we already had a fairly rigorous process. Can you hear me okay? We already had.
Well, sit at the
Feel free to-